morning and welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be going over 5 ways to optimize your banker. Now just stick around and enjoy the video. Okay, so today we're going to be going over 5 ways to optimize your banker, and that is mainly due to the fact that a lot of people are actually getting into gold making. Recently I've had a couple of questions, well quite a few questions, DM me on Discord asking me what is the best way to set up a banker and all that jazz. So I thought instead of just replying the same thing over and over again to a load of people, how about I just make a video on it and then just send that to you guys, because that would just be a hell of a lot easier to explain and be able to help a lot more people. So that being the case, without further ado, let's get into number 1, which is TSM mailing operations. Now when you're making a new banker, this is something I primarily focus on the most, and that is by linking all of my groups to a certain operation within mailing. When you're in the TSM mailing, what you're going to be wanting to do is create a mailing operation where it just sends all of your materials or stuff that you gather up throughout like your farming sessions, and have it to be able to be automated, so then when you click a button it just gathers anything in that group and sends it directly to that specific character. This is easily done by just stating what your character is, like their name, and then just linking that to the group in question. So i.e. if you're farming up materials and you have a materials group with all of the different materials, it will send anything in those groups directly to that banker in order to be sold on the auction house. I find this a great way because I usually have a banker for transmog and I have a banker for anything else. So that helps me divide everything up without having to think about it, and it just does the entire job for me instead of just click, 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 click. And overall, I found this to be quite helpful in the grand scheme of things, and it helps me to just take a little bit of time off, as I can let the TSM add-on take a lot of the workload off, and that just really helps overall. I would definitely bear in mind that if you lay out your groups correctly, you can always make that a hell of a lot more efficient. If it's actually viable to sell, then send it. If not, then you know what you can vendor, blah blah blah. But overall, if you just want to make a baseline thing for your banker, just to optimize them, just to make it a little bit better, then I would definitely link all of your groups towards the mailing operations to send it over to your banker. So all you have to do is one button press and it does it for you. So that is really handy overall when it comes towards getting set up with your banker. Now coming in at number 2, and at no surprise, is have a guild bank on your banker. And that is because there is multiple different reasons why you should have a guild bank with your banker, and the main reason is you can keep a stockpile of stuff. And what I mean by that is if you've done like 5-10 hours worth of farming one specific material, you don't really want to put all of that on the auction house at one time. You'll completely crush the market on your server. So what you can do is by drip feeding, and instead of just having those materials in your bags and taking up bag space, which overall, depending on how many things you're actually selling at one time, could actually make it a lot harder to repost stuff on the auction house. So it's better to actually keep those materials in a guild bank where it's linked between different characters. You can just all stock them in there instead of just mailing it over. For instance, for large quantities of stuff, you can just pop it in there and then your banker can take it whenever they need it to resupply on the auction house. The other reason for having a guild bank is so you can trade things between your characters without having to worry too much about different types of things. So like, i.e. finding a mailbox, because you can always, because not everyone has the KE stamp whistles toy to actually get hold of that, and even so that's on a 3-hour cooldown, and sometimes people are further away than from a mailbox than you would really want to go out of your way to go do it. So sometimes you have a guild bank that you can just pop open every half an hour and then you can just take as you wish. That is really helpful in the grand scheme of things, and I usually differ from the two of mailing and guild bank depending on how many items I'm actually farming up. Especially when it comes to transmog and I'm stocking up on stuff, I'll just keep a bulk load in the in the guild bank, and then hold on to that for a couple of days until I'm finished with my full overview of farming. Aside from that, if you are farming large quantities of things, this is definitely handy. And also if you're stockpiling things like mounts, if you've done a load of mounts, you can hold on to those because you don't really want to flood the auction house with those now, do you? So it's just a really good way in order to get to hold onto a load of stuff and have it linked between all of your characters is by having a guild bank. Okay, so coming in at number 3 is have a gold float. And what I mean by this is if you are a beginner, so if you already have an established banker and you're just looking to optimize, you shouldn't really worry about this one all that much. But if you are just making a banker and you've just been using your main to just post stuff, then I would recommend that you have a gold float on your banker. Now, predominantly some people just keep all of their gold on their banker, and rightfully so, it just makes sense because of like relisting and all that stuff. But I prefer to have all of my gold on my main character, so then if any random things come up that are high priced, I can just buy it outright. What I do tend to do, other than that, is have a gold float on some of my bankers, i.e. my transmog toon will always have 10,000 gold. And that is because he can then repost all of his stuff on the auction house and not run out of gold. And as well as that, I can send over any remaining gold over to my other characters and just make sure that they have enough gold on them as well. So having a gold float is really handy because then you know you're not going to lose out on gold when actually divvying it out between your characters or just sending it over to your main. And overall, I just find having a gold float helps if you have multiple bankers, because you'll want to pool all of your gold into one area and then you're going to want to leave some remaining. So I go with a 10k rule. My bankers have to have 10k minimum, whereas my main has all of my main gold. So I thought this would be really handy in order to just tell you guys what my principle is when it comes towards having a gold float. And number 3 is TSM shopping and sniper setup. Now, following on to different types of things when it comes to like shopping, sniping, all that jazz. Now, the sniper, I will tell you for instance that the sniper is pretty cool if you are into flipping. If you're into flipping, then I would definitely check out Billis and Nixia and also the Lazy Goldmaker in order to set it up correctly if you wanted to optimize your TSM to actually snipe different specific items. Aside from that, when it comes to shopping lists, you can do this for an array of different things, especially if you're crafting a lot of mats. You can then scan it to get low price materials for what you're actually trying to farm up. And this can be done by arranging your groups into certain subsections in order to actually click on those and then immediately scan that group on the auction house to see if there's any that are undervalued that you can buy up now, hold for a bit, buy out more later on, and then just see how it goes, and then you can then craft those other things for a lot cheaper than as you would. This is very helpful, and overall setting up a shopping operation is pretty damn simple. It's just state how much you're actually pretty much looking for. So if it's like 90% of the current market value, for instance, this is just an example, then it will show and then you can buy that out. Aside from that, this is definitely something that I have been playing around with a lot recently, especially with resetting different types of material markets with my farming up all of the mats. So I will run a shopping scan and then I will have a look at which type of materials are actually in those groups, and then if they're under 60%, I'll buy them and then relist them for 100%. Aside from all of that, I find that setting up shopping scan operations is very handy when you're actually trying to get cheap materials on the fly, and then over time you'll be able to get a load of these. Other than that, I do find this to be a great way in order to just make things a lot more streamlined and a bit more efficient overall when you're running your banker. Aside from that, let's move on to number 5, which is parking your banker. Now, for the most part, a lot of people with the Brutasaur now don't really have to worry all that much. Like, quite frankly, my guy can be in the open world because he's got the stamp whistle mailbox and the Brutasaur. So I could be in any place in the entire world and still do all of my auctioning and all of that jazz. But primarily, bankers should be based in capital cities, if failing that. So such as with like the Katie stamp whistle thing, the mailbox only lasts like a good few minutes. So I think it's like 10 minutes for that mailbox. So just enough time to do relist materials. But if you're relisting things like Transmog for bankers, then I would highly recommend parking them in either Stormwind or Orgrimmar for the best possible outcome. And here is why. The reason for that is if you go over to the Dwarven district for Stormwind, and if you just go to the front of Orgrimmar, you can then go to those respective auction houses, and then going to the mailboxes at the end of that area, it takes little time compared to the other different types of ones that you'll be going for. Such as if you are parked yourself in like another capital city like Silvermoon or something, you're gonna have to move a little bit further in order to get to the mailbox and all that jazz. You get my point. I want to spend the less time running to the mailbox and running back to relist my auctions, so I pick the closest ones, which quite frankly are Orgrimmar and Stormwind. There is no surprise that a lot of people park their alts in those cities because their mailboxes are not that far away from the auction house. Obviously, if you have the Brutosaur and the Stamp Whistle, you shouldn't really have a problem with that because you can basically just do that at a mailbox if you have the Brutosaur. But overall, it's usually Orgrimmar and Stormwind if you're just getting started with your banker. Other than that, that is my 5 ways in order to optimize your banker just a little bit better, and hopefully this has been of some help to you guys and answered any of your questions you may have had. Other than that, guys, have an awesome rest of the day, and I shall see you in the next video, which will be tomorrow. If you want to support the channel and help make the channel even better, then why not check out the Patreon? Members get additional info, gold making resources, and Patreon specific content. The link is located in the description down below. Thank you and have an awesome day.